Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have a VeChain video today, something we haven't covered for at least a few weeks, I think, for sure. I think the last update we had about 4 weeks ago around the very interesting Venom integration. Go check that one out for a bit of a reminder if you haven't seen that already. But guys, there's a very interesting topic today, some announcements or partnerships that came out this week. Another very interesting one for VeChain, and it's relating to pets. So I thought it was quite a cool one to delve into a bit more detail, particularly around the aspects of the pet industry and why VeChain is perhaps very interested in this particular area, and particularly blockchain's integration with this kind of industry as well. Now, before we do that, guys, it obviously would be great if you were able to check out any of the other videos that we've got on the channel. Loads of different topics and discussions, projects that we cover. Do leave comments in below of any that you would like us to cover this week upcoming. The studio is very much here now, so I've got a bit more time hopefully this week to bash out loads and loads of different videos as and when the requests come in, and of course any news that comes out, I will get those out as soon as possible. So guys, also don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Welcome to the channel if you are new, and of course welcome back if you've been with us for some time. Let's go straight into this one, guys. So as I said, this is relating to VeChain and a company called well, actually it's a project called VeTag. So they're joining forces. So VeTag being powered by VeChain. A new era in pet technology begins. Now, first and foremost, I just want to kind of mention that the usage of, like, I wouldn't say just about GPS tags, but you know, we have the microchipping available, right? And in general, if a pet, particularly a dog in this instance, was has run away from home or their owners, it's simple enough that when that animal is taken to the vets these days, particularly here in the UK, it may not be as easy in other countries, but the ultimate goal is that they can go through a scanning device and be able to essentially find out who the owner is, and the dog's name, etc. So this has kind of been there for some time. What is very similar to the general kind of healthcare industry, particularly for humans obviously, is this instance that potentially hospitals don't always talk to other hospitals, or if you are abroad, you don't tend to have your records easily accessible or indeed in a sharing format. Now, the healthcare industry, which we covered many times with the likes of projects such as Solve or Solve Care, that are really hammering home the fact that blockchain can really help with not only that, of course, there's the elements of how they can improve medicine and AI integration with blockchain for the medical science aspects of it, but predominantly electronic health records is a big factor of this, and it's similar in the pet industry. And I didn't really sort of think about this too much until I did a bit more research on this particular topic the last day or so. For me, it opened up obviously the equation of things like potential reduction in fraud, and especially with pet insurance, and especially for owners or about to be owners of pets where they've gone to purchase via a marketplace, whether it's on the Meta marketplace or Gumtree or all these different platforms that you can now pretty much go on and try and find a pet in your local area or around the country or even abroad sometimes, to go and buy off someone in a private aspect. Now, of course, there's a multitude of various dangers in this, and the main thing at the moment is the scam aspect of it, or the fraudulent activity of potentially buying an animal that is pedigree when it maybe isn't, and are the certificates for that pedigree legitimate or not. And very much in the instance of today's world, it is more easier than ever before to potentially create fraudulent documentation in that format. And the ultimate thing for governments, and particularly when we're looking at insurance premiums and things, the number one thing that comes into the equation is the cost. Now, fraud is a huge cost in the world. We know this. We do some great videos on the likes of digital ad fraudulent activity, and the use of veracity, how that can counteract that. We look at the healthcare market. We've looked at car insurance in the past, but I've never really looked into the pet insurance side and what the VTags aspect is about. So really quickly, VTags, and the reason I mentioned about like the microchipping aspect of this and earlier in the video, was that the NFC aspect, in the instance of being able to scan this NFC tag that's essentially going to be attached to the pet that you have, if you were to buy one of these these kind of collars and these key tags for the pets, allows you to scan that and basically have every historic information about your pet in terms of like healthcare, the insurance that may be linked with that pet. And of course, if more and more people have the application or the ability to scan these NFC tags, if they did find an animal in the street, they would be able to locate the owner, or at least the veterinary services could as well. And you kind of define like, well, is there really much difference between this and the microchipping service? As I said, they're very similar, but of course with the aspect of blockchain, you do open up the aspects of real confident and verified and processed data, whether we like it or not. In the coming years, all our processes, all our paperwork, all our documents or certificates will be in electronic format, and particularly in a blockchain process. So whether we have an argument in our minds that, oh, do we really need this? The fact of the matter is it's coming whether we like it or not. And we will be using these services and these products, these solutions. I would argue that 90% of the world's population wouldn't have a clue what blockchain technology is or what it will be, but they would be using it whether they knew it or not. And it's that simple principle that a lot of projects, technology in this space, and for you and I, or those that are new to the crypto space or blockchain, will start to understand this a lot more, that we can appreciate why it would go onto the blockchain platforms, into the technology that blockchain provides. So if you can imagine, and we talk about this on the channel a lot, about the integration of blockchain, 5G, AI, IoT, all of a sudden you start creating a pattern of algorithm and real-time data. And, when an insurance claim is fraudulent, it could be, notified immediately with the sense of blockchain processing and verifying everything. And of course, the AI aspect, the algorithm aspect, isn't someone on the other end manually putting a load of numbers together with insurance premium costs and interest rates going up on these. It's done on real-time data. So it could, in theory, be on a daily basis or a regular basis that we have when we come to renewing our insurance or our certifications for our pets. This can be done on a proper scale, as it were. So we can argue in that instance that there's a few areas already of interest when it comes to this. But this NFT solution is very interesting indeed, as it is obviously associated with Vechain. It's a project that we love here on the channel, and it's one that I'm sure many of you guys have either heard of or have in your portfolios as well. But as I said, it's when you start looking into a bit more detail about this. So we've already kind of covered roughly around the ownership or previous owners of a pet, or where you are maybe buying a puppy or a kitten or whatever animal or pet that you're purchasing. You can find historic details about this more and more. Now, I'm not saying that you could go back 100 years because blockchain hasn't been around for that long, obviously. Indeed, certain certifications and pedigree aspects, you can go quite far back in history. And this documentation will eventually catch up to the point where we'll get as much of the ancestry detail as possible. It's no different really to the records that we have of our predecessors and our families, etc., right? But of course, as I said, with blockchain, we can take it another step further. So you've got all the digitalization, you've got the processing, the verifying aspects of blockchain, and of course as well the ability of transferring potentially. So if you're maybe having to adopt a pet, or maybe give a pet to someone else because you can't afford it or you can't look after it, or whatever the reason is, there's more transparency available for us moving forwards. Whereas in some instances, and I've had this personally, where you've purchased a pet and you don't know the medical background of this whatever it is, a dog in my instance, and then you find out that there's a lot of hereditary problems down the line and you weren't prepared for that, or the insurance or the cost of that, it all starts stumbling in. So there's loads of really interesting applications to this, and even the definition of blockchain within pet care is quite interesting. I'll leave a link to this particular document. This is from 2020. There are some older ones, but I thought this was one of the most recent ones, and it had a bit more information about the emergence and the application of blockchain in pet care. It's very interesting, the data sharing aspects, how this can affect the the insurance, the cost of things, the data that we have and medical records, all of these kind of things. So I'll leave that in there. It's a really interesting topic from a number of different representatives putting this report together. But as I delved into this a bit more, it started getting my mind ticking, and I thought, well, what's the value of all this? Okay, so we know the global pet care market, which is quite phenomenal. This is just pet care, guys. This isn't the amount of money that's made from pets, but the pet care market, $150.67 billion as of 2021. That is a phenomenal amount of money. Now, when I looked at this a bit more detail, this is anticipated, right? The pet economy overall, the pet economy can go from $320 billion that it is today up to almost $500 billion by 2030. This is what I'm more interested in. So I'm not suggesting that VeChain is taking a humongous pie out of the pet economy. It's certainly going to take some of it, because I do think there's going to be a lot of marketing around this, and there's going to be a lot of competitors out there doing similar things already in the traditional, I would argue, Web 2 markets. But there's a lot of companies like VeChain applying that Web 3 methodology into the different industries. We know they have a significant part to play in things like supply chain, logistics, etc. And a lot of that is to do with tracking, tracing, verifying, processing. And it's no different in this instance for the pet care markets as well. So this starts giving me the notion in my head that this is a really interesting partnership. Okay, cool. Two great, interesting names putting together. But what's the actual residual value of all of this? And that's when it starts getting really exciting, when you start to understand all of these different areas. Some other things we just mentioned about fraudulent activity, I think these numbers are absolutely staggering. But an average person or an average victim through pet scams rose quite a bit actually in 2023. Well, obviously not the end of 2023 yet, but 24% increase. That's quite a phenomenal amount of people and amount of money that we're talking about here, if you consider how many pet owners there are in the world. And how many potential pets on average people have per household also. So it's really, really interesting to see this. And at the end of the day, governments, as I said, have a real interest in the amount of money that's lost in the economy because of fraudulent activity. Now, this in particular as well is not just pet care. Now, I'm not suggesting we're going to put huge key rings around birds' necks or anything like this. I mean, we do have the ability right now, and I've seen it firsthand. Sounds really random, but I used to work for a distribution company. We did things like sporting scopes, binoculars, etc. in the very interesting in the bird industry, the birding industry. And it's a phenomenal amount of money being purchased, products being purchased by people that are interested in watching birds, etc. But I saw a demonstration of how birds can be caught in nets that don't hurt them, and then they get the tag on their legs. And they showed computer data, and this was 10, 12 years ago. Obviously, it's improved even more since then. But they showed us data of some like sparrows that were captured like a year ago, and it showed their entire GPS location throughout that whole year. And it was absolutely unbelievable. It was like they were flying from the UK, they went all the way to South Africa, thousands of miles away, and then migrated left, right and center, almost around Europe and everything, and then back to the UK a year later. And it was quite phenomenal. So you can do that aspect of tracking, tracing and completing that data in a verified processing format in blockchain. But equally, on the other hand, I know that wildlife obviously has a cost to it as well. And I think this is quite a phenomenal statistic. US dollars wise, $8 to $10 billion annually in wildlife crime. That is phenomenal. That is a phenomenal amount of money in terms of crime. And I'm sure within that is some fraudulent aspects to that. But overall, the point being here is that there is a humongous amount of money in the magnitude of the pet and animal industry, wildlife industry, whatever you want to call it, the animals in general. that really hammers home that there's a specific area of interest and why these blockchain companies like Vechain would be so interested in the pet care and animal care markets. And as I said, it branches off to so many different significant areas, right? Not just the history, the documentation of what you have, your ownership wise of your pets and things, but also just the transparency of everything that goes on from potentially a fraudulent or criminal activity side of things as well. And ultimately, we do pay the price, you know, guys. Like, our interest rates are so high at the moment with car insurance and all of these other things, and big, you know, crime activities do contribute towards our premiums going up. So we always continue to pay more and more each year. Yeah, you're sitting there going, well, I haven't made any claims, but that's just the way it goes. Obviously, the Bank of England and other financial aspects do play their part in what rates are produced, but a lot of it does come down because of the cost of fraud and crime in these areas. So it's really, really interesting why they've gone into this kind of area, and it's so apparent when you do a bit more research and you look into this how that kind of comes together. You know, look at this. Figures from the Association of British Insurers show that detected pet insurance fraud soared to nearly £2 million last year, from 420,000 the year before. False claims, policies, everything. And how do these kind of insurance claims become fraudulent? Well, it could be misinformation. It could be lack of information that they provided or lied about something. And certainly from the certifications and things like this is where it becomes interesting, because once AI and blockchain can work together with insurance companies and people and the animals that we have, then we will have the real-time data. No more messing about, no more fudging numbers, changing things, making things up, or passing on an animal that has hereditary issues or anything like this. It can all be transparent moving forwards. So we're going from that aspect of a physical thing that could go around an animal's neck or whatever, in terms of a tag that can provide all this really interesting information about the animal specifically, but equally also within that digital identity, essentially digital identity, there is an ability for us to see even more than that as well. And this whole aspect was quite interesting. Pet as an NFT, we talked about physical NFTs or real world assets. Equally, some pets unfortunately are looked at as assets, but ultimately you can also adapt that NFT principle to the fact that this animal potentially has a value to it. If you are going to be passing it on, a non-fungible token, if you haven't watched the video that we did recently on NFTs, you'll understand even more why. We're not talking about pieces of art or anything like this. It's the aspect of the technology behind NFT principles that makes this make sense as well. The fact that an animal could be an NFT in a physical format and have that transparency, the historic data within it, digital identity, smart contract, and historic data. So hopefully that loops all those things together, guys. It gives you a bit of a rendition of the market values that we're talking about here and why it's so such an interesting partnership. And we as investors, of course, need to keep looking in deeper at these kind of partnerships. It's not just name grabbing or putting two names together just for the sake of it. There's a fundamental reason behind this, and I'm no doubt that these companies spend a lot of time working out the market data behind this as to why this is such an opportunity. So us as investors, we say, okay, cool, the VeChain powers this. Every form of a transaction, and I've always said transactions aren't always about money. They're also actions of transfer of data, transfer of actions, hence the word transaction. And if VeChain is powering a lot of this kind of stuff, particularly in the pet care industry or pets in general, it's going to be a phenomenal amount of usage of the VET token moving forwards. And in fact, you know, the amount of pets that are in the world right now is absolutely staggering as well. If you think about, I think I read the other day, it was something like over 1 billion pets worldwide. Again, you then times that by potential average value. You times that again by the potential opportunity with the insurance aspects of it, historic data and everything. It becomes really, really interesting. But that takes us to the VET price itself, or the VET token itself, as to see that is just one piece of the pie that they're involved in. Many things will evolve over the coming years, and certainly the next 10 years or so, I think it's really exciting to look at this in a bit more detail. So not a lot has changed since the last video that we did with VeChain price wise. We're very much still focusing around this 2 cent mark. I think the last video we did about 3-4 weeks ago was very much not too far off. This was around 1.8 cents, I think. But we still have these measured positions still available, certainly in my personal portfolio, in limit orders to try and grab some VET tokens at lower prices, even though we've seen a good rise in the last few weeks for the token. So I will keep those in constantly, because I do believe we will have still a lot of bouncing around these particular fib retracement levels, support and resistance levels as well. Because the ultimate thing here, and I'm just going to draw this in really quickly, the next kind of proper testing level up here could be 2.7 cents, something we haven't seen since roughly around that April time. But I think it's going to take a bit of a good go of investment over these coming weeks, if not a month, to get us to that area to retest it. But there's also that opportunity, if we look at the historic data, which we've drawn in many videos ago. These two orange bars, for me personally, represented the area that I was more interested in for purchasing VET. If I could get VET in these two areas, or slightly above and slightly below that, it's happy days for the long run of my investment with VeChain. So at the moment, as I said, the current price point is hitting this 2.2 cent mark. Very interestingly indeed, if we look back here, which is what, 2020. So we had this big drop back in March 2020. I started getting into VeChain around here, I believe. It was through Cheeky Crypto at the time. Chris over there, he's a very big advocate of VeChain, and he was explaining principles of supply chain, etc. And because of my distribution background, I was very interested to learn more, and I've always accumulated ever since at various different regions, guys. By the way, I've been buying VeChain at like 12-15 cents, let alone the 2 cents that it's at now. But my point being is that we're currently floating at these previous areas where we saw resistance on the way up. Also, we broke that barrier in the 2021 bull run, and then we came back down. And look at this, we saw resistance on the way down quite a lot. That stretches over about 4 or 5 months, guys. Very interesting indeed. And between that time and from then to now, from 2022, can you believe it? It has been very much fluctuating around that price point, with the exception of around June time, when we saw the reduction down to around about 1.5 cents, which is why I've been accumulating VeChain around this 2 cent level for some time. And I still will at these current levels as well. I do some manual purchases as well as my bigger orders at the lower levels, purely because I'm looking at my average kind of price point. And according to CoinMarketCap, my average purchase price, was roughly around 2.8 cents, which I'm pretty pleased with, because I was purchasing VeChain at like the 0.08 cent mark. What's that? 0.008. That's right. So just under the 1 cent mark. And I've also been purchasing it at higher methods as well. So to be purchasing at this area, I'm not angry. But when I did some calculations yesterday, when I was doing some research for this video, it was very interesting to see the big difference. Even if you're putting like $30 in or something, or $100, the difference in the magnitude, if we were to get to that previous all-time high at 25 cents, it does make a substantial difference when you're buying either at 2.2 cents or you're purchasing at 1.6 cents. It's quite interesting. If you ever get a chance to go on a profit calculator for crypto assets, it's quite interesting to see that. So it does play a part for sure psychologically when we're purchasing at these various levels. But I still stand my ground that we will definitely get to that previous all-time high in the next bull run. And I do anticipate us to test those higher regions as well. Certainly anticipating towards that 50 cent mark. I think it'll be a very, very giant push to get us by 2025 to 70 cents. It will really depend on the evolution of things like the trade finance areas and these other industries that we talk about when we relate to VeChain. But that, I'm not going to say no. And it could also happen because of the mass adoption increase. The amount of people that are coming into the crypto space over the next year or so could for sure push those numbers that high, definitely. But I'm being realistic in the sense that we should definitely hit this area and definitely try to at least attempt that 45 to 50 cent mark as well. It remains to be seen, But Vechain has had a very strong year overall. Loads of green here on the indicators on the performance side of things. And of course, the market has been very good overall in various different asset classes. So Vechain hasn't really been that much different in that instance. And it's still at a very respectable price to try and accumulate, in my opinion, for those upcoming bull runs in the next year, 18 months or so. The one thing that's working in my mind at the moment for Vechain is the RSI is on the bottom left here showing 60. This is still too high in my opinion, which is why I said I'm going to probably wait a couple of days just to see how this stabilizes. It will probably not move too much between that 2.1 cent and 2.4 cent mark. So if it does stabilize itself, I will grab some manually, but I am waiting still with my big purchase orders down at these 1.7 marks, because it does make a difference in the long run if you anticipate these previous all-time high levels and beyond that too. So that very much wraps up Vechain at the moment, guys. Please leave your comments below on what you think about Vechain. Have you been accumulating? Have you been waiting for your moment? And for sure, Vechain is a very, very interesting project. It's evolved as a company very nicely over the last few years. It's really hammering home the really interesting areas that it wants to go for. It used to look like it was trying to do everything, but they have really honed on some really interesting industries, that's for sure, and ones that have unbelievable amounts of value associated with them as well. Guys, thanks for watching this video. We'll catch up with you on the next VET video very soon. Take care and bye bye.